Hello and welcome to Season 2 of our First Baptist Church on Fifth podcast. Last season, we heard a number of conversations from our church's members who all answered the same 5 questions about their faith and doubt, about community and hope. This season, we're focusing on the 100th anniversary of our church house. We've been nestled right here on 5th Street in Winston-Salem for 100 years. And oh, if these walls could talk. Our conversations this season will tell a bit about our sacred space, its history, what it means to us, how we use the space and are sent from it. But our conversations will also broaden to the experience of sacred space in general, how we find home in sacred spaces, what sacred space means to communities and neighborhoods and cities, what formation happens, and how then we live. Join us this season for the First Baptist Church on Fifth podcast. And thank you for listening. Hello again, and welcome back to the First Baptist Church on Fifth podcast. You have been joining us on these weeks when we've talked about our church's history, and we're doing so as part of our 100th anniversary of this church house right here on 5th Street. Our theme this year, Home in the Heart of the City, is orienting us for what it means to continue to be a church in the heart of the city. And today I have with me once again our friend, historian, teacher, guide, Paul McCraw. Paul, we're so glad that you're with us. Thank you. We are going to pick right back up where we left off because we've spent these last 3 episodes talking about the church's history, particularly in relation to the spaces that we have occupied. Where we last left off, we spent some time talking about 2 decades worth of the church's history, from 1900 to about 1920. And Paul, you're doing such a good job of contextualizing the life of the church in the life of the city and the world around us. So let's start there. Would you give us some context? We're about in 1920 or so. So give us some context. What's happening around us?
Our city Winston had merged with Salem after several tries in 1913. And therefore in 1920, it was the largest city in the state with just over 48,000 people. And therefore, it brought about an entirely different attitude of growth and prosperity and so forth. And so we found ourselves at a time when we had to begin to look for another church building to replace the second one, on 2nd and Church Street. And we also found ourselves at the beginning of what we did not realize would be a very progressive and very booming age for our city's growth. And we had to answer some question about that. I think we might want to look at 2 big issues that we found to happen in the 20s that didn't affect quite our building, but affected attitudes toward our church.
Yes, let's hear about it.
Do that?
Yeah.
Well, there had been for some time, beginning earlier, a conversation between what had started as fundamentalist and we Baptists called progressives, thanks to a movement within our congregation in Texas. And so out of that came 2 further discussions. One was the discussion of evolution and how a church would respond to the theory of evolution. Much of that happened here in North Carolina, starting right here in Winston-Salem in 1922. Our mission at Salem had become a church, moved from Cherry Street to Broad and built a new building. And as they like to do, the Baptist State Convention went to the new buildings in the newest building in the state.
Okay.
This meeting was the first time evolution came up. And the president of Wake Forest was Dr. William Lewis Petit, and he was a biologist. And so he came to the convention and spoke in favor of not passing a law against teaching evolution. It made quite a stir. It was in all the news. And in the years that followed, there was still discussion, culminating in 25 when the Tennessee had a trial test, the Scopes we know in Dayton, Tennessee, and they passed a law prohibiting the teaching of evolution. North Carolina had been taking some action along with Southern Baptists. In 1923 or 4, the Southern Baptists met in Nashville where this was discussed, and they developed a new mission statement that addressed a new statement, less Calvinistic, I guess you might say. And because of that, they set the pace for the Southern Baptists. North Carolina had addressed this at state conventions, and then in 1925, it came up to the state legislature.
Wow.
And of course, Dr. Petit went there, and probably over half the members of the state legislature were Baptists anyway, so he convinced them. And we did not ever have a law in North Carolina prohibiting the teaching of evolution.
Wow.
And so I think, of course, our congregation approved wholeheartedly. The other was an interesting thing that affected our city, and probably more than any other in the state of North Carolina. But it was a movement throughout the country of what we call protracted meetings. That is a glorified, more lengthy revival.
Okay, so let me interrupt you. If there are people listening that don't know what a revival is, would you describe that?
A revival was had by many Protestant denominations. Even some today still call them revivals. And rural churches had them in the fall after what they call laying by time and before harvesting.
Okay.
And some also had some in the spring before planting.
Okay.
It was supposed to rev up the congregation to feel the need to be more Christ-like.
Okay.
Whether it ended up that way or not. But it was a series that usually lasted, in those days, a week or maybe 2 weekends and a week between. Now some have cut back to 2 or 3 days that still have them. So it was much smaller than the protracted meetings. It had started by being outside. And among those who spoke was Billy Sunday. He had spoken on the front of the Capitol to a large group of people, and lots of others had, and it spread throughout the United States. In the same year, we were trying to finish building our new current church house. We had one in Winston, and the only place you could meet at that time, large enough for that, was warehouses for the sale of tobacco. And the one they chose, because tobacco was not being sold at that time of year, beginning the last week in April until the last week in 6 months, last week in May, it was at a tobacco warehouse where Mass General Store and some of those other stores are now across from the side of what was then the post office.
Yeah.
And so it met 3 times a day for 6 weeks.
Oh, my gosh.
7 days a week.
And we're talking a full worship service with lots of minutes of preaching.
And lots of altar calls.
Okay, okay. Wow.
And so Billy Sunday's group was the main group, and they had other speakers. I don't know how anybody could hold forth three times a day.
And Billy Sunday would be, this very widely known revivalist preacher in the country. Yeah. Sure. Okay.
And so what happened is on the first day they had the meeting, there was 40,000 people.
Wow.
Who attended the 3 services.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
The Baptist church, Winston, our church, and almost all the Protestant churches in town would close down their services on Sunday night and Wednesday nights to allow their parishioners to go.
Gosh.
So the only worship services or service of any kind of that nature would be on Sunday morning.
Okay.
Otherwise, you were free to attend the services, and they really did. And believe it or not, 6 months later, they were still going strong.
Wow. Okay, so around the time that our congregation was beginning to think about another church house, these two cities had merged, there's growth happening. Winston-Salem's the largest city in the state, and these two sort of forces shaping religious life in our community between these progressive revivals and the conversation around evolution and teaching of evolution. You have really set the stage to help us understand what was happening when the congregation said, we want to move right here and we want to create a space unlike either of the two buildings before us. So tell us what in our congregation led to the decision to move to this location and build this building here.
Well, one other movement had started in our city, and it was based on the fact of the very large industries. And the men who were the industrialists and so forth were building their, what was referred to in those days as their palaces of business and industry.
Yeah.
And they decided they must have their churches to be palaces of, or cathedrals of business. And beginning in 22, the disciples of Christ, taking the first lead and First Baptist the second, every major downtown congregation except one moved further west and built large, impressive buildings.
Wow.
It lasted until 31, when Centenary was the last church, because it required a merger of two Methodist churches.
Okay.
So it was a movement that was very important to making the city impressive, not only with industry, but places of worship. And First Baptist, as I said, was the second of those, and the leader was his title at one time was treasurer, but whatever, he was the head person at Reynolds Tobacco, and a businessman, B.F. Huntley, who was a furniture producer. He had two plants on North Patterson. As you're going down the hill today toward Northwest Boulevard, that entire area to the left was made of two huge factories. His bedroom furniture plant was the largest in the country.
Wow.
His regular furniture plant was the largest in the South.
Wow.
He was a businessman who had built the Hotel Robert E. Lee. He had built a number of businesses in the city. He had served as the building chair for Baptist Hospital, which was finished in 23 as a result of the competition. And so he was, these two men took the leadership in motivating the church to do this. I might say about his work with Baptist Hospital, when the Baptist State Convention voted in 20, and began a competition in 21 to find a location. Many cities in the state, Raleigh, Greensboro, High Point, Charlotte, Salisbury, all began to compete along with Winston. Whoever could get $100,000 first by a certain date would get the site for the Baptist Hospital.
Wow.
And so, having the history of Dr. Brown, a Methodist layman took the leadership with a lot of other denominations to do that. We not only got 100,000 by that date, but went well over that and eventually ended up at 140,000.
Oh, my gosh.
And, of course, Baptist Hospital came here.
Yeah.
And Mr. B.F. Huntley was the chair of the building committee.
Wow.
And the church helped to service the building with those things other than furniture and hospital beds and so forth that it needed.
And we were one of the funding partners for
right.
the hospital.
And so was the other church that later merged with us, the Brown Memorial, which was on 4th Street at that time.
Okay.
So it was an endeavor of those two churches.
So that would have happened just shortly before the purchase of this land and the construction of this palace, as you described. So tell us what happened. So my memory of our church history is that there was one failed set of architectural drawings before they got to the current design. Tell us about that.
That's correct. The original design was to be exactly like the second church on 2nd and Church, and except that it would be larger.
Okay.
So they decided to buy at the highest point in the city, and that was 5th Street at Poplar.
Okay.
The entrance of the church, like on 2nd and Church, would be Poplar and 5th.
Okay.
And it would be some larger. They were later, just soon thereafter, able to buy a strip of land that connected Poplar and Spruce.
Yeah.
All the way across the back, which they had planned to use for Sunday school instruction and parking.
Yep.
Well, Mr. D. Rich from Reynolds Tobacco looked at the plans and he said, "You are building too small. God will not be happy with that amount of, and we need a larger building." He contacted the Doherty and Gardner Company from Nashville, Tennessee, who was building First Baptist in Knoxville, Tennessee at that time.
You know, you reference First Baptist Knoxville. That's the church where I grew up. And so just an aside, when I first walked in the door, I knew that the spaces looked very similar, but I was so struck by the almost identical replication of certain design features. So pick right back up.
Thank you. The church there was going to cost $400,000.
Okay.
We thought that was too much. So what they had asked at first, when Mr. D. Rich made the contact, is that our church would be a more narrow church, and it would cost only $300,000. Well, neither church lived up to their estimate, of course. And so Mr. D. Rich, again, decided we needed a bigger church. And so he was able to buy from a friend the last part of that is on Spruce and 5th, with the understanding that the house there would be left until the very last. And there were originally some pictures, which we are not able to find anymore, showing the construction with that house still intact.
Oh, my gosh.
So by doing that, they could put the building to take up the whole block. The only thing is, if you look at it today, even though Spruce Street has been widened, the church is slightly closer on the block to Poplar because they wanted to
leave that house. I never knew why that was the case. I've noticed that, but I didn't know that. Okay.
So then he said, after he talked again with Doherty and Gardner, that they wanted a round church, not a squeezed-in square church. So they began to work on that. And by the time they put all the decorations, including the vases and the dome was going to be the only thing on the top of the church. The cost was rising exponentially.
Sure.
And so every time they would get some problem, Mr. D. Rich would pledge more money.
Oh, gosh.
And finally, after $100,000 and $50,000, he wrote a check for $133,333.33. And he kept on, and so he would keep going to the committee, and so he went to that, and he said, "I've been praying about this. I think God would want a finger pointing upward toward God." That was, of course, the theology of the day. And they said, he said, with bells, a tower with bells.
Wow.
And they said, "Mr. Rich, do you have any idea how much that would cost?" He said, "Oh, yes, we've looked into it. It costs exactly $50,000. They said, "Mr. Rich, there is no way we have overdone it already." He said, "Oh, don't worry about it. I know a fine woman that will be able to give all $50,000. They said, "Who?" He said, "My wife." So I'm sure that came out of the same bank.
That's right.
So anyway,
Wow.
it was drawn up, and we still have a copy of it, I think, on the wall of the church here,
Yeah.
don't we?
Yeah.
The only thing that I can find that we did not do, we did not put large lamps down on the bottom of the steps on
Okay.
each side.
Yes.
Other
yes.
than that. In fact, they told him one time that we'd have to cut back on not putting the vases around the dome.
Okay.
And he said, "The vases have already been made."
Oh, my goodness.
Well, it was found that probably the vases had not been made. It was only the mold.
Oh.
So the vases were kept.
Oh,
And
my
so
goodness.
It
Wow.
was in all the glory.
Wow.
So Mr. D. Rich got
You know,
his
gosh,
desire.
this is such a particular story rooted in this particular community. So you think of what you've just described about D. Rich. He high up at Reynolds, with a strong interest in having his church house reflect the grandeur that he ascribed to God. So if you ever, as those of you who are listening, if you're ever in the sanctuary here at First Baptist, you will notice the 10 marbled green columns that surround the room. And one of my favorite tidbits about the sort of facts about our space is that at the top of the columns, you see what might just look like decorative leaves. Well, they're actually tobacco leaves. That's what they're modeled from in this space, sort of reflecting the unique locale of Winston-Salem and the imagination of D. Rich. This space is ornate. I mean, I'm looking around the room right now. There's lots of gold, and there's marble, and up in the dome ceiling, there's decorative plaster all around with these really interesting images. Is there anything about just the unique design of this space you want to tell us about?
First of all, it's round. The only other one they built later was First Baptist, which doesn't exist anymore. It's central. In Miami, the building is square, and the sanctuary is round. But this otherwise is the only round church that the company ever built.
Wow.
And they built quite a number of Baptist and Presbyterian churches over the years. I've been in several of those. And Mr. B.F. Huntley's furniture company made all of the furniture for the church.
Wow.
And a reduced rate of what it would have cost otherwise.
Wow. Would they have made the pews as well in the sanctuary?
Pews
Wow.
still. And all that furniture is still here. It was toned down from a darker mahogany type
Okay.
finish
Okay.
in the renovation in 1965.
Okay.
And so that otherwise it's still the same furniture, and the chair I'm sitting in
Wow.
and you
Yes.
are also
Wow.
from the B.F. Huntley. Mr. D. Rich had also been down to a Baptist academy at Buies Creek and decided that he would give money to help them by giving them a library in honor of his wife, Miss Carrie Rich. That was exactly 100 years ago. They celebrated that earlier this year.
Wow.
The library, original part of the building is no longer a library, but it's still on campus. He went down to see it, and it said over the entrance, Carrie Rich Memorial Library.
Wow.
Problem. Carrie and Rich were on two different pieces of cement. And he said, that will not work. My wife was too perfect. She was one of the original children in the church when it was formed.
Wow.
So, and had died the previous decade. So they tore that out, and it's quite evident today. And they just celebrated that. Ironically, with all the money he gave, he passed away 11 months before the church opened.
So he never saw
He never
completion.
saw the library at Bowie's Creek completed. And by the way, that became Campbell Junior College. He never saw this building even close to being completed. So that was sad. And then also, ironically, 1 year and 2 days later, Mr. B.F. Huntley passed away.
Wow.
He was on a business trip to Baltimore. And he had seen the opening in September. The dedication was to have been and was the first Sunday in November of 1925, and he had died the 25th of October. So it was a celebratory time for the church, for the dedication, but also a very sad one because they lost their two. 1 year and 2 days apart.
Wow.
And so that was an important
Yeah.
part of it.
So tell me about that dedication service. You said obviously it was colored with the loss.
There had been, it was on the 8th of November, and the Sunday before, they had started a revival. The first part of it was led by men who pastored churches that this church had started. And then at the end of the week, perhaps the most famous Baptist of that time, George Truett, North Carolinian from Hayesville, who was pastor of First Baptist Church in Dallas, Texas. And he had come. He had also been one of the speakers in 1920 on the Capitol steps. So he was quite well known by even non-Baptists. And he had a couple of nights of speaking and then was there for the dedication. The first words he said was, when he did his first sermon, I am glad to be in another progressive Baptist church. And so on Sunday morning, the building was originally seated almost 2,000.
Wow.
It's been reconfigured. It's not quite that many now. But it was filled and people standing outside and downstairs.
Wow.
By that time, the church, by the way, had been called by everybody anticipating that day the Round Church. And the overflow was in a lower auditorium, which now is Kelly, and it was called the BOWL, the Bowl Room. So both areas were filled with people who had come to the service. And then that night, Dr. Witherspoon came back and did a sermon.
Okay.
And there was about 1,500 for that service.
Oh, my
it
goodness.
was a tremendous celebration. Both newspapers, the Morning Journal and the Afternoon Sentinel, had pages of information, and we have some of that laminated. So it describes every aspect of the church.
Wow.
So,
as we're sitting here, we're recording kind of late in the afternoon, and the afternoon sun is coming right through these amber stained glass windows. This is one of the most beautiful times of day in the sanctuary when it's bathed in the warm glow of the sunlight. And I'm just sitting here imagining what it would have been like to be a congregant who gave a little bit of their money to, maybe not D. Rich or B.F. Huntley, but just an ordinary person, maybe a teacher or a farmer, a blacksmith who was a member here, gave a little bit of money and walked in this space for the very first time, having probably never seen something as grand and lovely as this. What an experience that would have been.
People began to come from all over the South to see the building.
Yeah.
And the interesting part was Sunday school. It was described as chaos with some degree of orderliness. And they finally found their rooms that they were supposed to be in.
Wow.
And, of course, every room was packed.
Everyone packed. Sure.
In the morning.
Well, that is where we're going to stop for today, as Paul has so beautifully narrated what led to the construction of this church house, what it was like under construction, how it came to be. This is the space we're celebrating in these 100 years. So I wanted to linger in this part of the story. Paul, thank you so much for telling it with humor and grace and interest. And we're excited to pick right back up where we left off in our next episode. Thank you all for listening, for your curiosity about the history of this place and her people. We will see you next time. Thank you.